Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Carver Conservation Commission meeting of Wednesday, August 16th, 2023. We have a quorum. We have 3 members. Not sure about Mr. Badger, but we have 3, so we can continue. Our first order of business under discussions is the Carver Wetland Bylaw and Regulation Flyer. We talked a little bit about this at our last meeting.
Do you want me to leave that on?
Hmm?
Do we leave the fan on?
I doesn't bother me that much.
Okay.
I think it's warm, but that's me.
I know. Well, I have to ask.
We had copies of the flyer at our last meeting. Gary has given us a Word document, which is probably easier to read through and edit. So if we want to look at this between now and our next meeting, do we have things for our September meeting? Is there anything on the agenda yet for September 6th?
Just right now I have a COC, but that's it.
All right, so we'll have to look at that, see if there's
Yeah, you
any.
guys may want to kick it to the 2nd.
I'm thinking we might.
'Cause
Okay.
It's only 2 days after Labor Day, so.
Right. Okay.
Oh, just so you know, further, the State Department, EEA, they're the ones that came up with the original flyer, and they said at their cost, they will re-put it together for us once
great.
we edit it, and they'll print it out at their cost.
Excellent. Okay, great. So if we can look at this and make any edits that we think are necessary for our next meeting, whenever that is. Next up on the agenda, I got an email from our town clerk, Kara Dayhill. The Attorney General's office has approved all of the wetlands bylaws that we passed at town meeting. So Articles 17 through 23 are now part of the Carver. There's a 90-day period that they can be appealed.
Correct.
But as of now, the Attorney General has approved them. If nothing is appealed in the next 90 days, the rulings are retroactive to last week.
Correct.
So
if anybody wanted to talk about them, I did print out what came off of the town webpage.
Right, they're
If you want, they're what we discussed before, but if anybody wanted to see them to refresh their memories.
right. They're stronger, particularly when it's in concerning the variance. There are more things that are now have to be taken into consideration when asking for a variance. It's just not only structures or impervious surfaces, it's everything. Fill, dredge, alter, build upon, disturb, etc. Within 65 feet now requires a variance, so it's stronger. I'm glad the town voted for it, and I'm glad that the Attorney General approved it. So hopefully within 90 days, we won't have any appeals, and this will become our law, which is good. Next up is 0 Wade Street. That is the property that is currently owned by the Redevelopment Authority, and they are hoping to convey ownership to the Conservation Commission. There were some issues with the property that were observed and noted in prior meetings, among them the fact that there was a shed that had been built by the adjacent homeowner that was on the Redevelopment Authority property, not on the homeowner's property. That shed has now been moved completely off of the town-owned property and is on the homeowner's property, the resident's property next door. There are still a couple of issues that have to be taken care of, and I will make sure that the Redevelopment Authority contacts the homeowner to take care of. There were 3 things that we saw this morning at our site visit. Number 1 is there is a small garden with a chain link fence around it that encroaches into the property that's going to be given to us. And that is a liability. It's a trip hazard, it's a cutting hazard, so that has to be removed. The former location of the shed, evidently there was power to the shed at some point, and the underground electrical cable that fed the barn is still in the ground, all coiled up. There's no way to telling if it's still live or not, but it is on the RDA's property, and that has to be removed. And then there's a wooden fence at the back of the property that the homeowner had installed that is not on their property, so that has to be removed as well. So those are the three things that the RDA will get in touch with the homeowner regarding and make sure that those are taken care of. I would say for our next meeting, Gary, that we can put on the agenda taking a vote to accept the RDA's
Okay.
offering so that the Conservation Commission takes ownership of that 9-acre parcel. And that can, that can be whenever we meet the next time.
Okay.
What is not on the discussion and business, and I'm just going to put it in here because it's something that happened within 48 hours of our posting of the agenda. We did hire a lawn maintenance company to clean up the 44 Lakeview Street property next to the Council on Aging, and the gentleman was hard at work at 4 o'clock this afternoon, starting to clean that whole property up. So we will engage his services through September so that it stays okay through September, and then sometime either later this year or early next year, we'll send out a request, an RFP for a maintenance company to maintain the property throughout the growing season, from spring through fall next year. We will, that takes care of discussions in business. Minutes.
155 Main Street, the trees down there.
Oh, 155 Main Street. Okay, that came up also quickly.
Yep.
A gentleman in 155 Main Street, which is just past Crescent Street going south, has some trees that are within the, looks like the 65-foot buffer zone to the wetlands. We went and looked at the trees today. For the most part, all of the trees are rotted at the base because of moisture. There are a number with a lot of dead branches that are leaning precariously toward his home. There was, of the 10 trees that he had marked for cutting, we only saw one that we felt was worthy of saving.
Yeah, way in the back there, yeah.
Yeah, the others were either dead, dying, or a danger to the home, so.
So you're gonna allow, what, 9 trees?
Yeah, we'll allow the 9
Now,
trees.
just for correction, it's 151 Main Street.
151 Main Street, okay.
He had also mentioned replacing them with planting some new trees too. He brought that
Yes.
up. So I don't know if it was a one-for-one thing, but he did mention that.
Yes, and it'll be it'll be our typical whenever we allow someone to cut a tree, because it's dangerous to leave the stump in place and not pull out the stumps. Leave them there to hold the soil intact. They can grind them down to flat, but
Right,
but
yep.
not.
And he agreed to that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good. Okay, so that, let me just write that down. That's 151. Okay. We will read the minutes afterwards.
Do you want to do that Shaw Road?
Oh, that's right, too. And that happened, when, Friday? Saturday? Shaw Road?
I don't know, he says he's been picking away at it. I went out Monday, and you guys went out today, so.
Okay. All right, there was, along the shore of Sampson's Pond at 4 Shaw Road, there was all of the understory right at the shoreline, and in from the shoreline approximately 15 feet was removed, and trees were, saplings were removed as well.
Would you like me to write a letter?
I think we should write a letter. And what, I mean, you saw it, you both saw it today.
Just ask to replant, I guess, yeah.
Replant
Yeah.
with native,
Yeah.
native understory.
Gary about what.
Yeah, it's a shady area. What grows there that's native?
No, you
Bluebird.
can grab like cinnamon ferns, and I noticed some of the herbaceous plants. He just cut them at the ground. Those should come back too.
All right.
So, well, you know, some maples, red maples will come in under there.
Okay. All right, so,
That work?
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so they should, and I'm assuming because of the location of that, that's the Savory Cove condominiums, that the association is the one who would get the letter.
Okay.
And then the association would have to deal with whoever it was among their members that did the cutting.
Okay.
But the association is liable to
Right.
get it fixed.
All right.
And should we put a timetable on it to plant something? I mean, trees are better planted in the fall.
Yeah, we're approaching that pretty quick.
So, end
Yeah.
of September?
Yeah, and some bush blueberries would do well in shade too, so.
High bush
Yeah,
blueberries,
that'll be a
alright.
good spray of
I'll
plants.
give him a month and a half to do it.
All right, so, yeah, let's put
Month and a half?
Yeah, let's say September 30th. Okay, is that it? Okay. All these last minute things. All right, continued public hearing. 46 Federal Road, NOI DEP file, SE 126-670. I don't have to read the whole thing. This is a continued hearing. I read it the first time. Gentlemen, welcome back.
Good to see you again.
Thank you for all your information.
Oh, they're on you too. You're determined to lose those, Bill. Ready?
Yep.
Ready for me to proceed?
Yes, go right ahead, please.
Okay, I'm Bill Madden from GAF Engineering here on behalf of the 80 Makepeace Company in the notice of intent that we have before the commission for the construction of approximately 22 acres of new cranberry bog and about a 3-acre water supply reservoir and some associated site grading and other cranberry related improvements at the site at 46 Federal Road. At the last meeting, we had some discussion on a few things. You asked me to provide some information to support the things that I talked about at the meeting. So what I did is I have my list, and to save time, I won't go through the list. I'll just hit what I
That's
have.
fine.
And if you have some other things, I'm sure I can address them. But one of the things that was brought up was the groundwater flow in the air and the elevation. And what I did with respect to that is I went to the USGS document that's available to anyone who's inclined to read it. The Geohydrology and Simulated Groundwater Flow of Plymouth County Aquifer in southeastern Massachusetts. It's a document that's published by the U.S. Geological Association. its investigative report. It is the document that's available for the South Coast, Southeastern Mass. And what we did is I took an excerpt from that map. It's a very large map, it covers a lot of towns in a lot of area. So what I did is I took a copy of that map that indicates the groundwater contours that USGS had determined based upon their placement of groundwater monitoring wells for the purpose of elevation, things of that nature, and other sources. There's public water supply wells that are in the area. So anything that really gave them data that they could use to determine what this groundwater flow was is what they used to prepare this report. And things like open water bodies, those are windows into the groundwater table. So when they establish an elevation, like when you look at your USGS quad sheet, there's going to be a number on the ponds. That coincides with the elevation of that surface water body. And that's consistent with the groundwater elevation in the area, say of Sampson's Pond, just by way of example. So we indicate where the project area is, where the groundwater, what the groundwater flows. Groundwater flows, I think I incorrectly spoke at the last meeting. I was speaking in general terms about the aquifer in general with the southwesterly flow. This groundwater flow in this immediate area is a southeasterly flow. It runs across the existing cranberry bog, across Makepeace land, under the landfill and down into, well, not quite down under the landfill, but in a more easterly direction. So those elevations, they're like 80 at Federal Road, there's 75 on the cranberry bogs. Our elevations that we show on our drawing from the groundwater elevation monitoring wells that we placed some time ago, very consistent with these elevations. As you know, groundwater table does fluctuate with the season of the year. When the vegetation grows, that extracts water out of the groundwater system. So that's why we have surplus water in, say, January, February, March, and April. All the plants are in their dormant state. There's nothing really using water. So the water table is a little higher at that point in time. When the plants start to grow and everything is coming to life for the year, they extract a lot of water out of the system, water table declines. And an easy way to look at it is, we get about 48 inches of rainfall in southeastern Mass each year. That's an average of 4 inches a month. Some months plants don't use anything. High water table really coincides with the season of the year. Seasons of the year where the plants utilize a lot of water table tends to go down. So that's really, that's the fundamental reasons why the water table fluctuates the way that it does. So long explanation on what we use to determine our water table. We observed it in the field, we noted it on the drawings. When we designed it, we had this document. It didn't come as any surprise to us as to what it is. So we say that we're consistent with what the groundwater elevations and the groundwater flows in the area. And when you look at this large cranberry bog, that one Kinko bog is around 75 acres. Series of ditches throughout it, that changes water table elevation. There's a stream that runs down through here somewhere. All those outlets, are used to manipulate the water table elevation in the area. But as a rule, the water tables that we observe, the water tables that are in the ditches of the cranberry bogs, the water tables that are shown on the USGS mapping are consistent.
Okay, good.
Second thing that I brought along was I provided a certified copy of the zoning bylaw, section 4300, the water resource protection bylaw of the town. A lot of discussion about protecting the water supply and groundwater in the town. I think you were accused of not doing your job in protecting that water. But if we read what the purpose is, the purpose of this section is to protect the public health, safety, welfare by preserving the quality of groundwater and surface water, which provides existing or potential water supplies to the town residents, cranberry growers, institutions, and businesses. That's the purpose of the bylaw. We go down to the next section, applicability. What does this bylaw apply to? What it states here is what it doesn't apply to. Does not apply to land in agricultural use or land being constructed for agricultural use. So, although this bylaw does not necessarily apply to our project, but we do comply with it, because one of the things that it talks about in there is separation of groundwater of 4 feet from the excavation. So our finished project is 4 feet above, better than 4 feet above the water table. So although it doesn't apply directly to our project, we felt that it's in best interest of all parties to utilize the bylaw in its intent. There's no prohibition of any uses that we're proposing on the site. You might recall that when we were talking about why groundwater protection is necessary, it's predominantly necessary due to land use. If we restrict the land uses that are the big polluters, then we minimize the exposure of the groundwater to being upset by those uses. Let's see, the third thing that I sent to you, I was also asked about, where do I come up with all these ideas and these, actually, I think there was a chuckle when I talked about frost protection, air movement, and what was the last one? Shading. So there was a little bit of a discussion about that. So what I did is I provided a document from the UMass Cranberry Experiment Station, and it's Cranberry Production, a guide for Massachusetts growers. I took the sections that were directly related to what we're attempting to do over here on this site, and the real purpose of that was to basically help everyone better understand how these cranberry bogs function. Back in the early 90s, there was a lot of cranberry activity in Carver going on. We did a lot of that work. I did a lot of that work. At that time, sometime in the late 90s, early 2000s, I was the chairman of the Plymouth County Conservation District. We were the body that hired farm planners for Plymouth County. There were no farm planners before we instituted that program to hire farm planners, and the farm planners are basically there to assist the cranberry growing community and help them better understand how all these best management practices, which were all becoming new to the growers, were good for them, and there would be positive influences on the crop yield, in the environment as well. So, when I was doing all that work, we had an opportunity to speak to all the conservation commissions in the communities that we were working with. And, I did a lot of discussions with commissions as to how these cranberry bogs function in the real world. 25, 35 years later, all these boards change, all the faces change, and the people that we had the opportunity to explain these things to, they're no longer there. Now we have new people. So really the job is more significant than what it had been. We need to do a better job, at least I do, in explaining how these cranberry bogs integrate with the environment and with the areas in where we're working. So that's why I put this section in there on the description of cranberry bogs. Because when we design these bogs, we isolate the cranberry bog from the water table. We isolate it 4 feet above the water table, and we do that through the construction of a slowly permeable confining layer, an organic layer consisting of at least about 8% organic matter, that's about a foot thick. Then above that, we have our planting sand, which is order of magnitude 8 inches for this project. So when we combine those elements together, we're really creating a basin that does not allow water to readily penetrate through the bottom of it. What we want to do is we want to detain the water in the organic matter, for as long as we possibly can, so that when there's a fertilizer application or a pesticide application or an application of an agrochemical, that material is retained within that organic layer, and it's used by that dense fibrous root system of the cranberry bog. One of the big differences, you might compare cranberry bog, yeah, okay, it's an agricultural farm product, but it's not a row crop. Row crops, the land is tilled each and every year, more than one occasion. You know, it gives a lot of opportunity for disturbances, for sediment to develop, for other things that might not be anticipated to occur due to that activity. We don't have that activity in cranberry cultivation. What we have is annually or every 3 years, we put a layer of maintenance sand on the cranberry bog to induce runner growth and produce more uprights to improve the cranberry yield. So when we have these 3-year processes of bog sanding, what you develop is you develop a thin lens of sand on top of a very thin organic layer. The organic layer is formed by rotted berries that fall off, cranberry leaves that fall off, debris that finds its way into the cranberry bog. So over, 10, 50, 100 years, you get to see a layering of this soil right in the top. This is in the top layer. So what that does is that promotes lateral and horizontal movement of water, the irrigation water, for example, that's put on the bog. That's what's used by the plant more so than the frost protection water. So that's another just key feature that this document that I provided shows you what actually goes on there. And then if you go to the page that shows the mineral bog construction cross-section, the way it's intended to be designed, and go to page 5 of our plan, the plan that's presented, drawing number 5, that shows the cross-section through the cranberry bogs. That's what you have. You have something that's very similar to this. Somebody might ask, oh, well, how can we be so sure that works? Well, I did a 400-acre project, the largest cranberry project in the state of Maine. The Department of Environmental Protection for Maine made us go into the field and do infiltration tests on all the soil on the acres of bogs that we built. And we had to restrict that water needed to be restricted to 1 inch of drop in 24 hours. And when we went through the testing process and received certification from DEP in Maine, the process was exactly the way it laid out. The bogs were in a very virtually identical setting. They were on the blueberry barrens, very, very thick lens of sand overlain by a very small layer of organic matter that the low brush blueberry would grow on. Had all the same materials out there. We had the organic matter on the site. We had the subsoil that forms the slowly permeable confining layer that was available. So all the resources that were necessary to properly build the project there are the same as what we have down here. So when we tested it and we built it and designed it, we do it the same way every time, nothing changes. It passed muster, it worked exactly the way it was intended to work, and state of Maine was trying to protect a river nearby that was salmon habitat. So that was the issue up there. There wasn't a large population center, but there weren't many salmon either, for that matter. But they wanted to protect the resource. So that's what we did there. There's also another section in here called the breakdown and movement of pesticides in the cranberry soil. This is a very important thing to read and to understand. It tells you exactly what I just explained, how things move and how things work on the cranberry bog. And as time goes on, each and every year, there's less and less approved things that can be used on the bog. In addition to that, to having a laundry list that's a little reduced in using, the concentrations of all these chemicals have have been reduced as well. So now there's, they're much weaker than what everything used to be in the past. You couple that with the way the bogs are designed and the way things are intended to work and the way they do work. I mean, the proof is in the field. This has been going on. We've been doing this for a lot of years. I don't see any of the things that have been brought up as problems in the region. So I thought it was important. I just wanted to use that so that you could understand a little bit more about how that actually works in the cranberry bog. It's a unique setting. There's not a lot of people that have had an opportunity to get to understand it the way I like to understand it. Also from UMass, there's water resource protection enhancement. I just took these excerpts out because, when I talk about air movement, when I talk about frost protection, when I talk about shading, things like that, factors that affect crop production. And, it's a common sense issue. Might not tell you exactly what the practice you should employ is to mitigate the adverse effects of either one of these, but it really comes down to being a common sense type issue. These growers are farmers. Those guys have been doing it all their life. They know what they need to do to make things better. So if it means if the easiest way to eradicate an insect is to remove its habitat, seems better than spending money, spending labor, spending time with another alternative means when it can be just source removed. So that's what we do when we move things back. So we have something there on the water resource protection and what you look at in your water resource protection enhancement checklist. Frost management is another thing. These bogs are all lower than the surrounding air. They all are. That's the way they're designed. They're a pocket for cold air. Cold air, gravity. This thing called gravity, the heavier things fall down. Cold air is heavier than warm air. Cold air is going to fall down, sink to the bottom of the bog. We have to have frost protection to protect the berries during certain periods of time. So frost management is a big thing. We'd like to have it like that big open 75 acres. It's not realistic when a company performer is looking to expand acreage, increase productivity, increase profit for the company. I mean, it is a business. It's a very big business, and there's business decisions that are made each day in the field that hopefully impact in a positive way the bottom line for the company. Another section on weed management. That's where we talked about the removing of the trees, the host trees, where the tent caterpillars or the gypsy moths might be in there, or the weevils. That's what happens. I mean, those critters find their way into the forested area, and wind blows them, animals move them. They migrate. They're mobile. They have wings. They have legs. They have little feet. So that's why we're choosing to come before you with a permit to remove the material on that ocean spray side of the property. And then the last document that I was able to provide or get from ADM was just an internal memo with the field superintendents. These are the guys that are out there every day, and this is what they like to do. This is what they'd like to see. So for weed management, they like to remove and cut. And I mean, the weed management, we don't want those seeds on the bog. The weed seed on the bog. We have to eradicate those. The most efficient way, the best way I see it, is hand pulling weeds. The cleanest bogs you see are usually the ones that they have a body out there pulling weeds. There's other methods as well. Tree cutting, increases the airflow in the area. You can see like these 75 acres or the aerial photograph in general. Just look at the size of the cranberry acreage. They produce because they're wide open spaces. They color up nicely because they're wide open spaces. Have a lot of good benefits of sunshine and things of that nature. Water, sprinkler system, irrigation that can be employed to meet the water standards of the plant. So I think those were basically the topics that I was asked to come back with some more detailed information. I didn't make any of this stuff up. It's all published information. I know where to find it. I have a lot of it. I've been doing it for a very long time. So with that, I'll entertain any questions you might have based on the information I provided.
Curtis, anything?
Nothing, no.
Nothing really, it's a curiosity. The ocean spray on the groundwater flow map, the ocean spray wells, there's some production wells over there they use for their processing, I guess. Do they test those periodically for?
If it's a public water supply well, which it is, they're required under the water supply
Right.
regulations of the state to conduct routine testing.
Like
Yes.
every year or whatever it is?
I think it's more than a year. I think it might be every 6 months.
Okay, so,
Yeah, so it is required to be done.
yeah, wasn't sure on the regulations.
Yep.
I'm just curious about that more
Yep.
than anything else, right? So that too, with that one, there's one municipal well also north, right, of the area too.
Yeah.
And the same applies.
And groundwater happens to be going in a southwesterly direction,
Right.
so our project in
Not gonna-
Cranberry Acreage, really, if you look at the plan, it's,
It's
pretty,
not gonna affect that well, probably at all.
should not, this project won't. I don't think any project will, for that matter.
Anything else? No, from you? I don't really have any questions. I just wanted to point out that one of the comments that was made at our last meeting in July regarding the work that was being done was, it was mentioned by someone from the audience that the bogs weren't built yet and therefore laws didn't apply. And the Water Resource Protection Act that you cited here and that was confirmed by our town clerk under applicability does state that the provision of Section 4300, the Water Resource Protection Act, shall not apply to land in agricultural use or land being constructed for agricultural use. And so that's a large part of an argument that was made at our last meeting in opposition to what you were proposing here. So it's very clear by the bylaws that that constructing a bog is as protected as existing bogs, which is a big thing here. We did not close the hearing, so it's still a public hearing. And if there's people from the audience who would like to speak, oops, sorry. Please come up and sit at one of the microphones. Sign in, please, at your on the sign-in sheet. And
Thank you, gentlemen. That was
yes, this was great.
nice.
Yeah, and this
Good
is
information.
And for the record, I don't know if I'm going to need to remark, but Rob D'Ambroso Law in Plymouth. And I've signed in.
okay. Great. Thank you, Rob.
How's everybody doing tonight? Do you have a pen?
Oh, there's no pen there?
Yeah, there's
There was one there.
I got one. I got it right here.
My name's Patty Cooney. I'm from 5 Canterbury Path in Carver. So I get doing all the organic material and the laying of the sand. That's good. My only concern is, you're saying that you have to cut trees down to keep out the caterpillars. What about, like how you said, the best way to get the weeds out is to pick them out. What about getting a predator species in there instead of taking out trees? Why don't you get a predator species that can come in, a native one that can take care of the bugs? We live down on a cranberry bog and they spray every year for mosquitoes and it doesn't do anything. But we have bats that finally come around, because if you're spraying stuff or you're cutting down things, you're taking away from the natural habitat of the predators that live in that environment. So that would be my only thing, instead of having to cut stuff down, what about, you know, and people let barn swallows stay in their barns because they eat the flies. You know, is that an option that companies, cranberry companies could do as a, you know, a better thing than taking out the trees that we need to keep our water good and keep the air good? And, you know, that's one thing that kind of concerns me.
All right, I'll address it a little bit, and then I'll let you fill in if you'd like. The insect, the insect part of the tree removal is just one of many items that are important for the tree removal. Frost mitigation, or lessening the need to deal with frost, is another one, because the lack of trees increases the airflow, and that was discussed at our last meeting. So the farther the trees are away, the more airflow there is on the bogs, which keeps the vines warmer, which therefore requires less maintenance, less water, less man hours. Also, it was mentioned tonight that the additional sunlight on the cranberry bogs themselves help with the color of the berries, gets them a bigger, brighter red, which is important for the saleability of the cranberries. So the insect control is a small part of the reason that the trees they are asking to have their trees removed. It's one of many different factors that affect the cranberry operation as a whole.
So what if they could take out half the trees that they wanted to take out, and include some type of, like I said, they've sprayed for years because we live on a cranberry bog and the mosquitoes are just insane. And I don't think taking a part of a habitat that has natural predators out would completely get rid of it, because then the things are still going to get there. But, you know, like you said, that was just something that I was thinking, that I try to look towards the side of what can you do that's going to impede on the environment as little as possible, you know. But
All right.
thank you.
All right. Is there anything you'd like to add to? No? Okay.
No,
I've got something to, the gypsy moth caterpillar is not a local critter, and right now, from what everybody in research and all that look into it, there's no natural predators we have, you know, bat or anything that like them. They just, that's why they're do what they do to trees and everything. Maybe someday, but as of right now, pretty much nothing eats them.
Now, what about putting, like people put the stuff on the bases of the trees to stop them from climbing up the trees to get into them?
You know, that's possible, but that's a lot of trees and stuff too.
Yeah. Well, it's, with everything that's going on with crazy fires, water issues that are going on, loss of habitats for different animals. I mean, we have bears coming in here that we've never had. We have all kinds of development going on around here. These bogs, I understand that it's the person's land, that they have the right to do what they want with it, but us as a town are impacted by what they do. You know, so it's there should be a median, you know, an in-between ground. If you're gonna have so much acreage be cut down, you know, the town itself is impacted by it. I understand, like you said, you know, just thoughts that I pop out that, you know,
Yep.
potentially I'm learning things come to these meetings, so it's good to
Okay.
learn stuff.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Yes. Yeah, you, Kathleen. Go on.
My name is Catherine Harrelson, and I represent Community Land and Water Coalition.
I did receive your email today.
Thank you very much.
Just as an aside, my name was spelled wrong.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was kind of rushing to get it in, and I apologize for the late submission, but I just wanted to get it in
Okay.
before the deadline.
It's not the first time it's been spelled wrong.
I'm sorry. Okay. I'm
Go
very,
ahead.
very sorry. The comments I'm going to be making are submitted by Community Land and Water Coalition. We're a project of Save the Pine Barrens. We're a nonprofit group whose mission is to protect, preserve, and steward the land and water resources of southeastern Massachusetts, including the Plymouth Carver sole source aquifer. Our members live, work, and recreate in Carver and are specifically impacted by the decisions made regarding land and water management in this area. So I have 4 points, if I may, and I'll try to be very brief about them. I was reviewing the last meeting on my way down here. During the last meeting, Mr. Badger had specifically requested more information in regards to the agricultural exemptions claimed by this project as an item that he wanted delivered to him from the applicant. I'm just curious if those were delivered to him.
There are no agricultural exemptions. This is new construction.
New construction. Okay, was that, he had specifically requested that, so I'm just wondering if he got clarification on that issue before.
Well,
this meeting.
that's pretty much it. It's new construction, so they have no exemptions. That's why they're here.
Okay, all right.
The only exemption they have is from the Water Resource Protection Act,
Right.
which was read earlier.
But as far as the WPA goes, they don't have any.
Okay, thank you. And then also, it was brought up by a woman named Jen, and I didn't catch her last name, and I'm not sure, I don't believe she's here. So she had brought up that this is Phase C of this project development for the TMUD, and she had mentioned that she had it in her documentation that this was going to require protected species review by the NHESP, and it was also going to require an archaeological impact review by the MHC. I'm just wondering if that was what looked into at all for this project. So.
That's all been done years ago. It's all on record with the MIPA filing, what have you. So the Makepeace, I think, for mitigation and I don't believe this area is subject to subject to natural resource endangered species here, but they put aside like a couple of 300 acres of land as mitigation for their projects. It's all outlined in that MIPA filing. And what was the other one?
Archaeological impacts.
Archaeological, yes, there was an archaeological survey that was done. PALS out of Rhode Island did that. They provided their recommendation to Makepeace. The recommendation was included with the design. So those have been addressed, and there was no further action necessary on either.
Good.
She also brought up the fact that the 7 acres of clearance were not originally in the environmental impact report that was approved in 2022 for the TMUD. So I just want to know if there's any further clarification needed on that as well.
This piece of land right here that was not included that I'm aware of. I know that the Cranberry Bog project was, whether that is can be deemed to be a portion of the Cranberry project. That's what it is. It's not resulting in any additional acreage, but it is resulting in some land that would be used for cultivation of cranberries.
Okay, thank you. So my final point, I just want to reiterate some of the points that I made during the last hearing. There were questions about the foundation of the science that I submitted during the last hearing as well that were brought up. And so I just wanted to provide further evidence that the affidavit of Scott Horsley is backed up by multiple reports, not only by the state government, but by the U.S. government as well. And this is what I submitted earlier this evening via email. So what I further submitted this evening were reports by Mass DEP, the 2003 Massachusetts Erosion and Sediment Control Guidelines for Urban and Suburban Areas, which specifically state that sand and gravel provides a very porous medium for transporting soluble pollutants. A major threat to groundwater exists when excavation activities take place in these areas. Exposure of the saturated zone and recharge areas can leave groundwater resources vulnerable to contamination, and so on. The second report that I submitted was again by the Mass DEP. It's undated as far as I know. The Massachusetts Clean Water Toolkit Best Management Practices Fact Sheet for Natural Resources Extraction, which states that these are sand and gravel pits, surface mines in similar areas. Exposed soil and mineral resources are subject to wind and water erosion. Both surface and groundwater hydrology may be changed due to these land use changes. And the last document that I submitted was the U.S. Department of Agriculture working in partnership with the U.S. Forest Service and the Natural Resources Conservation Service called Working Trees for Water Quality. And again, this area was completely cleared of all vegetation. This report states that unfortunately, contaminants in many groundwater and surface water sources exceed national health and safety standards. Non-point source pollution, the leading cause of these water quality problems, comes from both rural and urban sources. And basically the point of this report is to state that vegetation and natural tree cover filters and protects the groundwater resource beneath it. So I just want to state for the record that what we submitted last time is backed up by multiple scientists across many different disciplines, from state to federal level governments as well. So I'd just like to reiterate the point that I was making the last time, that this was an area that was previously vegetated, and it's not just the 30 or so acres of trees that we're looking at. It's close to 100 acres of trees that were removed, and I can't. The total earth removal for the federal road projects, I think was it 50 million cubic yards of earth around that for the federal road, for the removal of these projects on the federal road. So I'd like to reiterate the point that this commission not look at this one particular project in regards to impacts to the environment and to the groundwater resources of Carver, but looks at this as a whole. And I'd like to ask the question, for the hydrology report that you cited earlier, was that from 2009 by any chance?
No,
What is the date on that?
the one, 1982, I believe.
1982, the one for Plymouth County?
92.
92?
92.
Yeah.
So there's been significant earth removal in this particular area of Carver since that was conducted, and that's a regional study of groundwater. There are, as the applicant stated, there are no monitoring wells on site. We don't know what the exact elevations are of groundwater on the site, particularly in light of the earth removal that's been taking place over the last 15 years in this region. So I'd like to conclude by asking that we conduct further studies into the groundwater resources of this area before any further permits are considered for this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
A couple of things you can talk about. Just, may I reply, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, you sure may.
Things, the Horsley report, that report was not prepared specific to this project. That affidavit is for a totally different project, and I believe it's in a totally different town. So whether everything is the same or not, I don't know, but I think it's a little disingenuous to be presenting a plan, a report that has nothing to do with the town of Carver and weaponizing it against this project. Soluble pollutants in gravel pits, maybe you can agree with the movement of soluble pollutants in a gravel pit if the land were to remain a gravel pit. This is a phase of construction. All cranberry bogs involve construction. So, this is not going to remain a gravel pit. And when you look at your USGS quad sheet, you'll see the little pick and axe all around the map. Those are abandoned gravel pits. There's a lot of abandoned gravel pits around. This is not going to end up that way. This is going to end up land in agricultural use and land in production. And let's see. And as far as clearing of vegetation, I mean, back in the, I don't know, I think it was like the late 1700s when the boat building, shipbuilding, the coke, the iron ore and all that stuff was being mined and smelted around here. This whole area was devoid of every tree. This is all second generation growth, so it's not the first time it's happened. It's not old growth forest by any stretch, but it's just another thing that really isn't germane to what's going on here.
So you're going to revegetate the side slopes and everything once everything's met?
Everything gets revegetated.
Okay. Thank
The
you.
landing areas might be a little sparse, but, you know, the turf will be established on the inside slopes of all the dike roads. The dike roads will be established. Everything is, you know, the way you would envision a top shelf cranberry operation to be run and built.
And if I'm not mistaken, the vines themselves, as they regenerate every year and the rotted berries created that thin layer that you spoke about, that even becomes more of a mat to keep pollutants, et cetera, from reaching the groundwater.
Correct.
Right? It gets thicker and thicker as time goes on.
As a soil scientist, organic matter is one of the better uptake mediums for capturing pollutants and other such items.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to just make a general remark briefly. You know, I think it's important, and I think this commission is doing this, but I just want to be sure and make sure that this hearing is not treated as a referendum on Makepeace as a corporate entity, an aggregation of Makepeace activities across multiple sites, a referendum on groundwater protection in Carver or Southeast Massachusetts, the propriety of earth removal. Again, those are kind of talking points and concepts that have been raised by members of the audience, Community Land Water Coalition, Save the Pine Barrens. You know, what's before this commission is a certain project. We're seeking orders of condition relative to the construction of cranberry bogs that are going into agricultural production for a long-standing project. You know, the expansion of this, furthermore, which was pointed out at the July 19th meeting, is only marginally within jurisdiction. So it's a narrow question before you, and I just want to reiterate that, again, a lot of the talking points that have been provided on July 19th and some of the ones from Ms. Harrelson really, I think, strive to make this more of a referendum generally on concepts that are really taken up, if at all, by the legislative body, not by this commission. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we understand that. We also have an obligation to allow people to speak at a public hearing, and there are few venues where the public gets a chance to do that. So I try to err on the side of compassion as opposed to
Yep.
you know, let people get their thoughts out and their ideas out. But I think that the integrity of this board and knowing what it is that we're ruling on is good. So I don't think that should be a concern.
Thank you.
All right. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Gary James. I'm an engineer with Bader. I'm actually with working for CWLC. And I'd just like to make a couple of comments.
Go right ahead, sir.
Sign in,
Sign in, please.
Oh. Hold on.
Take your time.
Yeah. Again, your name, please, sir?
Gary James.
All right, and you're
Nice to meet you, Mr. Madden. See your name quite a bit on the plans.
from?
I'm from Beta.
Okay, and where do you live?
I live in Hanover.
Okay,
I'm not a resident of Carver.
okay, that's fine. But for the record, just want to have it down.
I
for
have
the
been
record.
looking over the plans in association with CWLC to try and look at it in terms of compliance with both of the Act and the bylaw. And I do agree with Bill. The most important aspect of this in terms of the expansion of the agricultural use is the implementation of the agricultural use. And I think that's the big issue here in terms of what's going on. If you look at the aerial photographs as this project has progressed, the original permit was issued in 2011 in terms of the earth removal associated with this, 1.4 million yards. It was then upgraded again in 2017, I believe 750,000 yards. And I'm assuming that was part of the 1.4 million, so that was the remainder. But if you look at the aerials in 2015, the area associated with the Phase 1 bogs and the recovery pond, which I believe was 8.32 acres and another 2.9 acres, was pretty much devoid and was pretty much right down to the grade associated with the implementation of that, of the agricultural use. So This has been sitting here for about 8 years, and I think that's part of the reason why CWLC is a little bit concerned about this. It's been sitting here for quite a while. There's nothing more than exposed earth. And when you look at the overall site, it's about 37 acres right now. And they want to expand it to about 50 acres. So I think the question mark is that for this commission maybe to consider is there a timetable associated with the implementation of the agricultural use? That, you know, that I think is probably more important in terms of the protection of the resources, of the groundwater resources than because the material's already been removed. The other issue is that when you look at the aerial photography, at times there has been standing water exposed. Even under, if you look at Mass Mapper and you look at some of the aerial photography that is there, at times there has been exposed groundwater in certain places. I'm not sure if it's perched or if it's a real reflection of the groundwater, but it's been fluctuating enough that perhaps a little bit more investigation into overall estimated seasonal high groundwaters may be warranted. That might be it. The other issue is that when you look at the entrance roadway, and you look at the areas just north of the entrance roadway and the areas, I'm sorry, the area north of the entrance roadway and just the area just south of the entrance road. I think it's somewhere around 7 acres north of the entrance roadway. Another probably 4 acres that are beyond the limits of the Phase 3 bogs. There's about 11 acres there that's being altered. In fact, if you want, I can point it out on the plans.
If it's not within the jurisdiction of the
Well, the question mark
Conservation
is
Commission,
that...
which is 100 feet from a bordering vegetated wetland, it's not our purview.
No, but the question mark is that there is activity within the limits of the buffer associated with that. And there's actually activity within the limits of the 65-foot buffer associated with those activities in those areas. Now, I understand beyond the limits of the 100-foot that you're outside the jurisdiction of the commission. That's, but the question mark is that if you look at the issuance of the variance under the bylaw is very specific in terms of what is the hardship associated with it. So if you look at the overall volumes, if we look at this, originally they were approved for the 1.4 million. They're now looking for an additional 1.3 million.
Of soil removal?
Soil removal, yes, so 2.7.
That would be the Earth Committee, Earth Removal
Yeah.
Committee,
I understand that.
not us.
But if you look at the area north, there's about 70,000 yards. So I guess the question mark is when you look at the request for the variance, is there a hardship? And I guess that would be the question mark. I understand now in hearing Bill's testimony associated with trying to stop the mitigation or the migration of pests into it and to give you a little bit more sun exposure. So certainly on the basis of that, there is justification for the tree removal associated, but is there justification for the additional soil removal?
That's not within our purview. As I said at our last meeting as well, and I said it in front of Bill, all it would take for Makepeace is to reduce the size of 2 of the bogs that they're proposing to move them outside of the 100-foot, and they don't have to come back to this building again for us.
No, I understand that. The
And,
question,
you know-
the issue is, I believe, is that the activity within the limits of the 100-foot buffer associated with just along the outside edge, along the perimeter road.
Yeah, it's minimal.
I understand it is.
So, well, I thank you for that. I will address your first question. When we did the site visit back in July, we spoke to, Bill was there. I don't remember the other gentleman who was there. He was from Makepeace, and we did talk about timing.
Terry Gibbs, I think, was the
Yeah.
fellow.
Yeah, I spoke to him.
Yeah, we did talk about timing, and I believe it was, they were expecting to have something in the ground by next year.
Yeah, they'd like to have it buttoned up by the end of next
producing
year.
in 3 years.
Well, I'm not advising this commission, so obviously, but, you know, if that, I believe it might help if it were actually part of a condition associated with the issuance of the orders. But that I'll leave to the commission. Obviously, it's your decision, not mine.
I don't know if that is an order of conditions that we can enforce, since it would be based on forcing a company to do something that in a market that may change what needs to happen.
Well, the
So-
question, I guess the question mark is that with all of this exposed, with all of these exposed surfaces associated with it within the proximity of the wetlands, you know, if you look at the erosion that has taken place, there is some erosion that is taking place on, if you look directly south of the roadway as it turns, you can see that there has been, although I haven't been out on the site, so I'm only basing this on the basis of the aerial photography that has been done, that I see, that you can see that there is some erosion that has taken place. So there has been, you know, potentially some impacts in some of the resource areas associated with it based on the fact that there is that much exposure.
All right, on the day we were there was a bulldozer grading all of the sloping land going down to where the bogs are being built. So that was being taken care of to eliminate the erosion. There was also activity squaring off where the bogs were based on what the drawings were. So that, I think, certainly to me, and I'm assuming to the rest of the members of the board who were there, it showed progress that these were actually becoming cranberry bogs, which is what Makepeace is proposing and what we're voting on. So,
I'll leave it to you then.
all right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yes, sir.
I'll sign it. Okay, so
Name and address.
Dan Farini, Fosdick Road.
Thank you.
You all know me. So this has been going on for 8 years. I went by the other day, and I don't see any signs of vegetation. Again, I'll reemphasize what I said last time I was here. I have a neighbor up the street from me who stripped all his bogs. They did earth removal. Now the bogs have all been planted. They're showing progress, and this was all within 1 year. You have this that's going on for 8 years. They have not planted any cranberry bogs. They've left it scarred. And I'm asking this commission or this to make if you make a decision, please put a caveat in that mandates that they do some vegetation before they can proceed. They haven't done anything for 8 years. What's going to say when they're done with this, well, we're going to expand it further, and nothing ever gets done. That's my point. And so I'm asking you as the board that put a caveat that there has to be some type of vegetation planted before they can go any further to assure it's going to be used for agricultural purposes and that only. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Ms. Cooney?
It's quick.
Okay.
So he said the hydrology report was done in 1992, and like, that's when the thing was done, right? I mean, that's like 30-something years ago. So how can a hydrology report be accurate from like 30-something years ago? So I would say should definitely do some type of hydrology report. The land has changed so much in this town since then. You know, I mean, that's something that you could have them have to do, wouldn't it be?
The hydrology report encompasses every town in Carver.
Okay.
I mean, in this area. This is just a small
Yeah.
area.
Well, for him to say that things flow this way or flow that way, we've had how many cubic yards taken out of this town? So how do we know that in the last 32 years that hasn't changed or anything's changed? I mean, looking at the place on 44, they took out a huge mound of land, and that's totally changed everything. You know, I can't imagine that it wouldn't change from 30-something years ago. You know, you can't really say, oh, everything's fine. Yeah, everything was fine 32 years ago because it was completely different. Just like you said, you know, the growth pattern has changed because we have new growth now. So, you know, a new hydrology report would definitely be something that I think that would put a lot of people's minds at ease in town because of the water issues that we're having. My aunt lives over in the things right over here, and they're on the North Water Carver water district, and her water's all messed up. So I mean, if we keep on taking stuff out of here, what's gonna do to the rest of us? If we don't have an accurate hydrology report that shows something from, within the last 10 years.
Because it's old does not mean it's inaccurate.
Well, no, but things change though. Like you said, if you go outside, and even this other gentleman said that there was different erosion stuff going on. And that was what, in an 8-year period, things have eroded that much to now you could see stuff. And even like you said, it got fixed. But how do you know underground hasn't changed that much? Because things shift. I grew up here, I see the different stuff that's happened, and, I put a lot of faith in you guys to make sure that these things are being kept up. And, 80 Makepeace is a huge company. Couldn't they afford to get a hydrology report done? I mean, that's not a huge thing, I don't think, is it?
It is a huge thing.
It is a huge thing, but,
So what
but
what
also,
do we-
they do have monitoring wells here.
Yeah,
And those wells, they check them, and if they don't vary, then it means that it's not changing. You know what I mean? So this is a huge system too.
Yeah.
You're talking about that aquifer that is covering, many miles, and the whole Plymouth County controls the groundwater flow in this area. It's not just here.
yeah.
So this little project here is probably not going to impact the groundwater table at all.
But there's this little project here, this little project there, this little project there.
Right.
Every little project adds up to a big amount of impact. I just want to know, like I said, I have a house here. I want clean water.
So do the growers.
Yes, but they have how much extra money versus what I have,
They still need clean water, and this industry's been in this town for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Generations. And they would not be successful and continue to do this if they didn't have the clean water that gave a healthy product
Yeah.
to the world. So, all right. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. I will accept a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Second? All right. It's been moved to close the hearing and seconded by Mr. Blake. All those in favor say aye. Aye?
Aye.
All right, approved 3-0. I will accept a motion to approve the NOI for DEP, file SE 126-670, as shown on the plans. Can I get a set of the plans, please?
You want me to read them, or do you want to read them?
I just want the date.
May 15th, 2023.
All right, as shown on the plans, May 15th, 2023, with conditions put forward by the conservation
I'll
agent.
do, for the special conditions, it'll be what we generally cut for, someone making new cranberry bogs. Heavy emphasis on erosion control, monitoring all that. If anything strange happens, they have to call me. That acceptable?
Absolutely.
Okay. And also to the folks that are worried about the vegetation, when they come in for their certificate of compliance, when the gentlemen here go out to walk the site, if the vegetation isn't abundant and they see erosion, the COC doesn't get cut. That does not help make peace at all, all right? So I put that also in the special conditions.
Yeah, COC is a certificate of compliance,
Compliance,
which
right.
means that everything on the order of conditions has to be met before they get signed off on being.
And the order of conditions does put a lien on the property, so they have to be held to that, all right?
All right, so, anyway, I'll accept that motion.
So moved.
Moved and seconded to approve the NOI for DEP SE 126-670. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, so approved 3-0. I will now accept a motion to approve the variance for the minor activity grading equipment activities that will be conducted within the 65-foot buffer.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
This is just within a 65-foot buffer.
This is the variance for the 65-foot
Right.
buffer for the
And it's only a small area.
Yes.
very tiny area. And as indicated in the filing, it says minor activity grading and equipment activity, so that's what it covers. So it's been moved and seconded to approve the variance for NOI DEP SC 126670. All those in favor say aye. An aye, so that's 3-0 also. And we're done.
Minutes.
Yes, I mean, we're done with the hearings. We're done with the hearing. Thank you for all your work on this. This was very helpful.
Yes.
And
Good reading.
and will be helpful in the future as others come in for.
Oh, and if
similar
anything
things.
comes up on this project or, anything similarly related, please feel free to call and,
Okay, we will.
happy to help out any way we can.
Great. No, this was really interesting and
No, it is.
and helpful. You think you know as much as you can about berries, and then you read this, and it's like eye-opening.
Had to read bits and pieces though.
Right.
Can't read it all at one time, but in pieces it's good.
Hey, but thanks a lot, much appreciated.
Yep, thank you, guys.
All right, thanks.
Have a good night.
Have a good
And
night.
thank you for the information, it's great.
Yeah. All right. The minutes for August 2nd.
Folks, could you take the conversation outside, please?
Sorry about that, guys.
Cities and towns are giving up trees because of climate change. We've had the hottest summer in record, and you're allowing the cutting of a rare forest. What is wrong? You're called the Conservation Commission, period. I'm really disappointed in what you've let happen here in this town. It's really unfortunate. It's disturbing.
All right, so, has everyone read the minutes from August 2nd?
No.
We give it a
Oh,
look over real quick. Don't run away.
oh, we didn't get them to sign it,
Oh,
the plans.
I get it.
All right.
Walking slow.
Thank you.
I don't think they realize that we don't have any jurisdiction over trees they're gonna cut down. We don't. I was gonna say it, but. What? Plus, we're still
on record, so.
Yep. No, we'll wait till Gary gets back and we'll approve the minutes. Well, actually, he doesn't have to do that. All right, we'll approve the minutes. Are they all set? Are you guys all set?
I'm good.
I'm good with the minutes. Oh, that.
All right, so I need a motion to approve the minutes
So
from
moved.
August 2nd. So moved by Mr. Hall.
Second.
Second by Mr. Lake. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, so that's approved 3-0. There was something else I just remembered. As another last minute thing, the macadam from the old tennis courts has been
Right.
removed at behind the Council on Aging for the pickleball that we had voted on last meeting. That was in the minutes. There's someone asked about a turtle, box turtle species that lays their eggs in the fall, in the late summer, fall. So someone, Gary knows, who came down and looked and saw that there was indication that the turtles were there. So while the removal of the materials that were excavated from the tennis courts can continue, we're basically on a holding pattern until such time as it's either been determined that we can move forward regardless of what happens with the turtles, or that the turtles have to lay their eggs and move on, then we can go after that. I just brought up the thing about the turtles.
Oh, okay.
That was another last minute thing. So do you, I just basically said that we're in a holding pattern until we hear back from,
From NHESP, yeah,
okay.
which is Natural Heritage, something,
guys.
something.
Those guys. Right. Okay, so I think that takes care of it.
Motion closed?
Motion to adjourn, second?
Second.
All right, moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we're out. Thank you, Area 58.